Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in every relationship where you're faced with a choice. Stay silent to keep the peace, or speak your truth and risk shaking the ground beneath you. We're often told that if we want love to last, we have to protect their pride, avoid the difficult conversations, and never challenge the comfort of the one we care about. But what if I told you it's the exact opposite? What if the very thing you're afraid to say, the truth that might bruise his ego, is the one thing that would actually bring him closer, not because you hurt him, but because you held him to something higher? Because in a world where everyone tiptoes around truth, the most attractive thing you can do is stand in yours. The right man doesn't need you to shrink for him to feel big. He doesn't require you to silence your opinions so his can echo louder. He doesn't view disagreement as disrespect, and he certainly doesn't interpret challenge as threat. In fact, what draws him in, what earns his admiration, is the very presence of your strength, not the kind of strength that shouts, but the kind that holds its ground with calm, steady conviction. You see, the wrong kind of man equates submission with affection. He wants a woman who agrees, obeys, and makes him feel powerful because she's too afraid to say, "No, I don't see it that way." But the right man, he feels safest with someone who's not afraid to challenge him. He doesn't fall for the version of you that's always agreeable. He falls for the version that's real, present, and honest, someone who doesn't flatter his ego but speaks to his potential. Challenge isn't confrontation, it's connection at a higher level. When you point out something he hasn't seen in himself or call out something he's doing that hurts, you're not pushing him away, you're inviting him in deeper. You're saying, "I see you, I believe in your capacity to show up better." And that belief, it carries more weight than any empty compliment ever could. The man who's worth your time, your love, your energy, he understands that growth only happens when there's friction. Not chaos, not unnecessary drama, but healthy friction, the kind that sparks reflection, not resentment. He'll remember the moment you didn't laugh off the behavior that bothered you. He'll replay the moment you said, "I know you can do better than that," and realize it wasn't a criticism. It was a vote of confidence. You weren't attacking him. You were holding him to a higher standard because you saw his capacity, even if he didn't in that moment. That's why so many women end up feeling invisible in relationships where they try to be easy, where they keep the peace, don't express a need, don't set a boundary, and then they wonder why the connection feels flat. It's because love without truth is a performance, and performances always end. But when you show up fully, with your full voice, full heart, and full honesty, you give him the gift of reality. You show him what it's like to be in a relationship that challenges and awakens, not one that simply pleases. There's a reason the right kind of man doesn't fear a woman who holds him accountable. He respects her, he trusts her. She becomes more than just someone he dates. She becomes someone he grows with. She becomes a catalyst, a mirror, a reminder of who he wants to be when he's with her. Challenge means saying, "I expect you to treat me with care." Even if it bruises his ego, it means saying, "I won't settle for breadcrumbs," even when he's used to giving just enough. And when you say those things, not with harshness but with calm clarity, you filter out the men who just wanted control. You attract the one who wants connection, and that man, the one who's ready, who's open, who's mature. He won't punish you for holding a boundary. He won't label you as difficult. He'll step up. He'll listen. He may stumble, but he'll reflect and return with more depth, more care, more alignment, not because you forced him to, but because your presence called him to. So don't dilute yourself to keep the peace. Don't tame your truth to seem easier to love, because the right man doesn't love ease. He loves you, especially the version of you who stands strong in what you believe, even if it makes him a little uncomfortable. Because he knows, if you can challenge him and still love him, still respect him, still support him, that's not weakness, that's rare. And it's exactly what he's been searching for. There's a quiet power in knowing where your line is and refusing to step over it just to keep someone else comfortable. Too often, we're taught that love means being accommodating, agreeable, and endlessly understanding. That protecting a man's pride somehow earns us his affection, that if we make things easy for him, he'll see our worth. But that's not how real connection is built. The truth is, protecting your standards is infinitely more attractive than protecting his pride. Because your standards speak for who you are, what you value, and what you believe you deserve. When you prioritize his pride at the expense of your truth, you begin to vanish in the relationship. You become someone who tolerates instead of chooses, who accepts instead of asserts. And slowly, he doesn't fall more in love with you. He loses respect for the very core of you, not necessarily because he's cruel, but because people can only honor what you consistently honor in yourself. If you keep letting things slide, if you keep giving more chances than you should, you're not showing grace. You're showing a man exactly what he can get away with. There's nothing more attractive than someone who knows what they will and won't accept. That kind of clarity isn't cold or rigid, it's magnetic. It sends a message that says, I don't need you to validate me, I'm already enough. I don't need to be chosen by someone who can't meet me where I am. And that energy, that self-respect, it commands presence, it demands care, not through control or fear, but through value. When you protect your standards, you make it clear that connection has to be mutual, that consistency matters, that words mean nothing without follow-through, and that you're not interested in raising a man's self-esteem while he tramples on your emotional safety. You stop over-functioning. You stop softening your no into maybe. You stop letting affection blind you to patterns that hurt. And yes, when you start showing up this way, some people will say you're too much. They'll tell you you're being difficult or high maintenance, but those are the words of people who benefit from your silence. The people who grow when you draw the line will thank you for it. A man who's ready will admire that you didn't lie to yourself just to protect his feelings. He'll notice that you didn't flatter him at the cost of your own peace. He'll feel the difference between someone who wants to be liked and someone who wants to be respected, and it will change the way he sees you, because let's be honest, anyone can make a man feel good about himself. But not everyone has the courage to hold a man accountable to the kind of partner he's capable of being. When you protect your standards, you stop being impressed by charm and start requiring character. You stop needing promises and start observing patterns. You stop asking, "Do you like me?" and start asking, "Does this align with the love I know I deserve?" This doesn't mean being harsh. It doesn't mean closing your heart. In fact, it's the opposite. It means having a heart so full of self-worth that you can love someone deeply and still walk away if they stop showing up. It means being open but not foolish, kind but not compliant. It means giving a man the chance to rise, not the permission to fall short and still stay close. And the moment you do this, you become unforgettable, because you're not the woman who folded when things got uncomfortable. You're the one who stayed true to herself, even when she really liked him, even when it would have been easier to stay quiet. You didn't trade your dignity for attention. You didn't trade your standards for temporary connection. You stayed rooted, you stayed clear, and in a world that rewards conformity, that kind of authenticity is rare. That kind of woman, she isn't just attractive, she's a force, and the right man will feel it in his chest every time she says, "This is who I am, and this is what I will not compromise." You don't hurt his ego to tear him down, but to wake him up. The intention isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's not about making him feel small, it's about reminding him of the space he's taking up without consideration. So many people equate truth with attack, as if expressing a boundary is an act of war, but in reality it's a signal, a mirror, a wake-up call that says, I see something here that you're not seeing, and I'm no longer willing to stay quiet about it. When someone gets used to emotional comfort, they begin to confuse silence with approval. They assume that because you didn't say anything, everything must be fine. And if you're the type of person who's empathetic, patient, and giving, it's easy to fall into the role of the peacekeeper. You tell yourself he didn't mean it that way, or it's not a big deal, while little cracks in respect and alignment start to widen. But the moment you speak up, the moment you say, this doesn't work for me, or I'm not okay with being treated this way, you disrupt that comfort. And yes, it may sting, it may make his ego flinch, but that discomfort, that's where awareness begins, not because you're trying to shame him, but because you're trying to hold the relationship to a higher standard. You're offering him a chance, not to feel bad, but to be better. There's a powerful difference between criticism and challenge. Criticism attacks character. Challenge invites growth. And when you challenge someone with love and honesty, it means you care enough to risk the fallout. You care enough to risk being misunderstood, because staying quiet would be easier, letting things slide would be less messy, but your truth has too much value to be buried for the sake of someone else's temporary comfort. When you speak from a place of emotional clarity, not anger, not manipulation, but grounded knowing, you become the person who wakes him up to the reality of how he's showing up. You make him see that not everything will be forgiven just because he's charming. That love isn't unconditional when it costs you your dignity. That closeness doesn't mean compliance. The right man will feel that. He may not love it in the moment. He may retreat, get defensive, or need time to sit with what you said. But if he's emotionally ready, if he has the maturity to see beyond his bruised pride, he'll come back, he'll reflect, he'll own it, not just to win you back, but because your truth showed him something about himself he couldn't unsee. This is what separates flattery from intimacy. Flattery keeps things surface level. It says what he wants to hear. Intimacy, on the other hand, risks the momentary rupture in service of something deeper. It holds up the mirror, even when what he sees in it is uncomfortable. It says, I care too much to let you keep showing up like this without saying something. That's not sabotage, that's strength. That's love that isn't afraid to challenge what's broken in order to build something real. People don't grow in safe bubbles. They grow in the presence of someone who reflects both their light and their shadows, someone who says, I see who you are, but I also see who you could be, and I won't pretend not to notice the gap. That person may trigger him. She may make him feel exposed, but if he's the right man, he won't run from her. He'll respect her. He'll be drawn to her not despite the discomfort, but because of it. You're not here to be a cheerleader for his limitations. You're here to be the partner who calls him forward, who doesn't weaponize truth but also doesn't sugarcoat it, who says what needs to be said with compassion and courage, and if that hurts his ego, that's not your problem, that's his opportunity, an opportunity to shift, to see himself, to rise to meet the version of himself he's capable of becoming, and when he does, when he sees that your challenge was actually an act of love, he won't resent you. He'll thank you, because in a world full of people who protect his pride, you were the one who protected the potential of what you both could become. Ego is reactive. It bristles at discomfort, recoils at critique, and resists anything that suggests it may not be fully in control. It wants to be right. It wants to be admired. It wants to be untouched, but love, real love, isn't concerned with being right. It's concerned with being real, and when truth enters the room, ego flinches. But love leans in. The moment you speak up with honesty, especially when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable, you'll often see the ego's first reaction. It might come as defensiveness, retreat, sarcasm, or silence. Because ego, by its nature, is fragile. It thrives on external validation and avoids internal confrontation. So when you challenge a behavior, express a need, or draw a boundary, ego takes it personally. It interprets feedback as attack, and if that's the only part of someone you're speaking to, their ego, you'll feel that resistance loud and clear, but underneath the ego there's something deeper, something softer. Love doesn't panic when confronted with truth. It doesn't run from discomfort. It recognizes that pain can be a signpost for growth. So while the ego flinches, love steadies itself. It leans in, it listens. Love isn't afraid of friction because it knows that friction, when handled with care, sharpens connection. It reveals truth. It exposes what needs to be healed, and the right person, the one who loves from a place of depth, won't resent you for being honest. He may struggle at first, he may get quiet, he may retreat for a moment, but he'll come back, not to defend himself, but to understand. He'll come back because something in your truth resonated more than his pride resisted. So if you ever find yourself in that moment, the one where you're tempted to hold back, to smooth it over, to protect his ego at the cost of your truth, pause, ask yourself, what kind of love am I building? One that needs me to disappear, or one that honors the fullness of who I am, because the right man won't just tolerate your standards. He'll rise to meet them. He won't love you because you made him feel like a king. He'll love you because you reminded him how to be one. Don't be afraid to shake his comfort if it means standing in your clarity. Don't soften your voice just to make space for his pride. The kind of love that lasts doesn't come from walking on eggshells. It comes from walking in truth. And when you do that, you won't just be loved. You'll be loved madly. Thank you.